Just to call to order the May 11th, 2020 Zoning Commission meeting at 7:03. The first item on the agenda is approval of our previous minutes, March 9th, 2019.
Did everybody get those, by the way? I know we had some staff delay on that. So just with everything going on.
I think was Brady on the board back then? I don't think so. I don't think Julie was either, right?
On what date?
No, I'm sorry. I had the wrong date here. Let me show you what it was actually for just last month or March of 2020. That's my fault. I just adjusted it on this agenda, but had the wrong date. And those minutes should have reflected the March 9th, 2020.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone have any comments?
Nothing I know of.
Make a motion to go ahead and approve them.
Have a second?
Second.
Alex, you call the roll?
Mr. Hood?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Perelman?
Yes.
Mr. Rigner?
Yes.
And Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Okay.
Do I have a procedural question? Do we need to swear in Ben Yoder?
Yes, and myself as well.
You actually don't, attorneys, you don't need to swear in. Lay people, you do.
So just me?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So I don't have the actual of the swear in, but I think it pretty much goes like raise your right hand.
Do you
swear that
hold on. I can bring it up if you'd like. Here, 1 second.
That'd be great.
Or if you'd like, I can just tell you, Alex.
Okay.
All right. Are you ready? You can raise your right hand.
Okay. You just want to do it. Okay.
It's virtual, but it's happening. So.
Yep.
All right. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be true and accurate to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right. The next item is number 3, review of the updated bylaws draft.
Yes. So
turn it over to you.
thank you. Sorry, Kitty. So we did talk about this last meeting, and I did make those changes, and I believe I had those in the first packet. However, I just wanted to double check with Ben to see what he thought, make sure we didn't have any pitfalls. And of course, I should have realized, and foresaw that we would have some. So Ben had a really good review of them, and I thought it would be more beneficial and to be safe rather than sorry, we should go kind of line by line over his suggested changes just to make sure we don't put anything in there that can come back to harm us in the future unintentionally, though it may be. Since we did have a document that we were working off of from the past, but it's been many years since those have been looked at. And as Ben and I were going through, there's a lot of even ORC changes, and not to mention Hamilton Township zoning code changes that have happened since then. So if it's okay with you, Madam Chair, I would suggest that we have Ben help us go line by line with it, and I can pull it up on my screen if that is helpful for everybody. Oh, I think you're muted.
Sorry. Yes, and Ben, we'll kick it over to you.
Okay, great. Maybe I'll wait for Alex if you can get that up.
Yeah, I will do it. And then I guess you won't be able to see it since I won't be speaking, but Ben, is there any chance you could do it? Are you able to share your screen? If not, I can pull them up.
Can't see. I can try. Sorry, I printed it out for paranoia that it's not going to work, and so I don't have it pulled up at the moment.
So, I just pulled it up here. I don't know. Does that work for everybody, or would it help to have Ben?
Oh, there it is.
It's perfect.
That's there.
Okay. Well, let's just do that. That way, Ben, you can just talk and not have to worry about it.
Okay, yeah, happy to. So, again, the whole concept of this is just creating bylaws for you all to live by. Those can be a double-edged sword, and you don't technically have to have them. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. the upside of having them, frankly, is it gives the board some consistency and regularity and predictability so that you guys know how everything's supposed to go. The downside to that is, frankly, it kind of gives you expectations that the public can rely on, and in a pinch, call you on and say, hey, your bylaws say you're supposed to do this, but you're not doing it. Why not? So, it can cut both ways. You don't have to have them, but you can. Many of the entities we work with have them. Some choose not to have them. That's a personal thing for you all to choose. I try to be the lawyer and tell you the law, but it's really your policy decision to make, however you want to make it. So just bear that in mind as we start going through some of these. Some of them, I'll try to hit the highlights. Some of them are just, non-substantive changes in wording, things here and there, but I'll go through it. So just under section 1, I updated that to be the right ORC provision for zoning commission, which if you're ever bored or interested, you can always go there, see what you guys technically do. It's 519.04. It basically says, amongst other things, there shall be a zoning commission that's appointed by the trustees. It's 5 plus up to 2 alternates. The trustees do the appointing. And that's for the most part it. They added some language we'll talk about later, talking about if ever someone wants to get rid of a zoning commission or BZA member, how they go about doing that, which we'll talk about later. So,
Hey, Ben, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I want to ask this question, I guess, just first, before we get into it, if we don't need to, or if we don't want to, do we still want to have bylaws to the commission? And should that be something you all want to vote on now, just to make sure we agree we should have these moving forward?
I mean, I don't have a problem with having bylaws.
Yeah, I think it would make meetings, it helps set the expectation for us, but also sets the expectations for the public who wants to comment. And I like that part of it. So
Mm-hmm.
I think most of us are in agreement, then we should keep them. Yes.
Okay. Yep, thanks. I just wanted to make sure.
okay, great. Then I'll go ahead and start hitting it then. So again, after updating the ORC provision, I just added some language in section 1 that basically is catch-all language that says, zoning commission hears, amongst other things, text and map amendments, plan unit developments, and all other functions assigned to you by virtue of the zoning code. So that's just catch-all language that probably doesn't need to be discussed at length. And Alex, if you want to scroll down a little bit, probably to the next real changes. All right. So some of this stuff, again, it's getting into the nitty gritty of this, but it talks about you have to give at least 48 hours before each meeting a notice stating the place of the meeting. This is under D, obviously. And then it also says that all the matters are to be given to the director and to each member of the commission by delivery thereof. So we're talking really about your meeting packets to members' residents or by depositing the same in the United States mail. If you want to, you still can do it that way. If it's in here, theoretically, you're supposed to have it that way. If you want them by mail, email, both, I don't know, smoke signal, whatever you want, you guys can do. One problem, though, is obviously if you want it in the United States mail, you probably want more than 48 hours advance notice because that might not get to you before you actually have your hearing. So whatever you want is yours to choose.
I would say we either delete that part or change it to email so that there's the or is, if they're not going to be delivered, that they're via email.
But I would just say that we allow it to be delivered to the members' residence or by mail or by email. That way, any matter, as long as we get it 48 hours in advance, I don't care how you get it to us.
And it does say at least, so if they send it out in advance of that, they can, but.
Yeah.
Look at that, Alex. Live
Am I
time.
allowed to do this? Is that easy?
Yeah.
Okay. If we're in agreement here, I just.
Might want to put by email or mail deposit. Flip your email.
Take out the or, so comma after residence. By mail.
Or email.
you could get rid of all of that and just put members' residence and not specify how.
But I think we could probably clear that up for you guys in a way that catches it all and says, we'll get it to you one way or another by at least 48 hours in advance. Is that good?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right. So,
The only thing is that 48 hours in advance, isn't that Saturday? So do we want to say 72 because it's really not practical? We're going to get it on Friday. That seems kind of, I mean, unless Alex is going to start working weekends.
That's a good point. I'm good with
I
that.
don't care. You can put 48 and then you can always do 72 and you can exceed the expectations, Alex.
Yeah, or 48 hours or
I mean,
one
it says
business
at least
day.
48, so
Yeah, so you're fine.
Okay.
yeah, it's fine.
all right, we're good. We can go to section 3, Alex. So these first two sections, A and B, honestly, I don't really love in that what it's attempting to state is more or less what's already covered in Ohio Revised Code 519.04. So it's almost superfluous to say it. You don't really need it. You can't trump in your bylaws anything that the ORC says. So to me, it almost makes sense to not say anything. If you're going to say something, you know, like say you've got a new board member that comes on and they want to know what you do and review your bylaws, maybe like for instance on section 3A, just that section that says commission composition, appointments, and terms are governed by and shall comply with Ohio Revised Code 519.04. Alex and I talked about here and elsewhere, you know, you could theoretically paste the exact language in from 519.04, but what if it changes?
Right.
So you could leave it out altogether because again, it's superfluous, but if you just leave in a reference, then it might get readers to go, oh, okay, what's the zoning commission and it's controlled by ORC what? Maybe I'll go look at that. And then it'll always remain updated no matter if they amend it, so long as they don't take out that whole section. So that's really my thinking for both A and B for the most part. I'm not sure if anyone's married to some concept, but again, I try to be the lawyer here, not the policymaker. That's up for you guys to decide.
I like the change.
Yeah, I do too.
Okay. Here's where it starts getting a little bit where I go, you start looking at section 3 subsections C and D, and it's talking about in order that the zoning commissioner may legally visit property for which a zone change is requested, the director shall solicit permission of the owner. And then also D, members shall. Again, shall means required, not even permissive. Shall physically view the property for which a zone change is requested before the zone change hearing takes place. This, in some senses, goes back to a conversation that some of you guys were in when I did the joint training with both your BZA and your zoning commission. And I recall, I think, frankly, a now no longer member of BZA, but that member was extremely married to the concept of, I want to go walk the property on my own. I want to be able to talk to the property owner. I want to, you know, feel the dirt and see it. And as a zoning lawyer, that gave me the heebie-jeebies. There's a big difference between zoning commission generally and BZA. Obviously, the BZA is a quasi-judicial body. Appeals of yours go straight to court. So concepts like ex parte communications, like you could have with a judge, would apply more in concept to a BZA than it would to a zoning commission. But there are instances when you're not a recommending body to the trustee, I believe, under your code, where you might be having to make a decision. And frankly, to be honest, it's just not good form. That's what you've got staff for. I think best practices certainly would be, you know, familiarize yourself like the public would if you want to by driving by a property if you don't know it. But don't get out. Don't go walk onto the private property. What if you slip and fall? Not to play a lawyer on it, but, you know, who's responsible for an injury there and those types of issues. That's what you've got staff for. Tell Alex, you know, hey, I'm not so sure about this property. Can you get on the property and take those pictures and talk to the guy and ask those questions? But let him do that. That's what you're paying him for rather than you all. Now, that little diatribe notwithstanding, again, there's nothing per se illegal in and of itself of an individual zoning commission member or BZA member, getting permission and going onto a property and viewing it in advance of it. It just raises lots of potential due process issues of you being on that property and the applicant later, or some neighbor that's opposed to it, not knowing what conversations were had or what was seen and not seen. So that's my comments as to section 3, subsections C and D.
I think that we could leave it up to Alex to help us. There's certain properties you can absolutely see from the road and you don't need to get off the road. You don't need to do anything. Other properties, not so easy to see. And I think I'd rather just leave that and, leave that up to Alex, where he says, hey, you're not going to be able to see this from the road. We'll have to get permission, and then we can go in groups of 2.
If you want to, you can. Again, I would, just being blunt, I would not recommend even having zoning commissioners go out there in groups of 2 or at all. I would say, Alex, get me good pictures. Find a way to orient us if you need to take video. But again, just being clear, if you want to say, and I legitimately don't mind it in the least, but just go, that's dumb lawyer talk, this is what we're doing, fine. I just want you to go into it with eyes wide open.
Yeah, I would think that there's probably one that we'll run into every 5 years. That's something that we probably need to see it. But I would say for the most part, we can, between, Google Earth and the Warren County maps and driving by, I think we'll be fine.
So we can remove that then? We can remove C and D?
You can remove that and still do that practice where you go out there. Frankly, you could even go in a group of 5 or with an alternate as well. Again, a public meeting is one that's pre-convened for the purposes of deliberating public session.
So if we're not deliberating anything, it's fine if we all go out together to visit a property.
Yeah, there's good ways to do that nonetheless. And you might even want to provide, like, for instance, when the trustees go to the OTA to the winter conference, they'll typically put out a notice that says, hey, just so you know, we're going to be there. We're not going to deliberate, but we want everything to look above board. So, here's a notice of what we're doing. You could do something similar to that if you needed to, but yeah, you don't need subsections C and D to do, Julie, what you might be interested in doing.
So Beth, we can remove this completely. And if for some reason 5 years from now we decide you've got to go out and look, we can still go look. We don't need verbiage to tell us we have to. So
Exactly.
okay. So yeah, I'm cool with that.
All right. Speeding up. So section 4, officers, under A, you've got listed secretary. Again, like a resounding gong, 519.04. It doesn't say anything about a vice chair, frankly, even let alone a secretary. So you don't have to have a secretary. A lot of boards have historically had them simply because literally you had someone that was recording the minutes. Now with, hiring staff, they typically do that for you. If you want to have someone that's in there in a pitch that says, oh, we're designating you for this year term to be the person that in a pinch takes notes, but you don't have to. It's up to you guys. Again, you don't have to have a vice chair even. I'd certainly recommend keeping that though, because that kind of at least sets the expectation of like, oh gosh, I need to know what I'm doing generally so that if the chair is not there, I can run the meeting.
I'm okay with removing it. Yep.
I mean, somebody's getting fired tonight though. I'm not sure who that is.
Yeah,
but-
Amanda, are you okay with that?
You might get volunteers.
Your job just got easier, Amanda.
I was going to say, I think, Dan, we're still expecting you to hit the record button, though.
That's right.
All right, so that's the only comment under that part. If you want to move down a little lower. I think that takes out then under officers, subsection D.
Okay.
And if you wanted to, I don't think you need it,
Oh,
but.
so there's.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, am I still going farther? I'm taking
No,
this
you
out.
got it. That's right there. Again, if you wanted to say something alternatively, I don't think you need it, but you could say, staff is responsible for doing all of these types of functions. Not that it's needed, but if you want it to be, for clarity's sake, you could put something in there. All right. moving on. So now you're under section 5, subsection D. Yeah, perfect. I would not include that last sentence in D that basically says advice of counsel shall be received and entered into the minutes before disposition of any question of law or matter requiring legal interpretation. I'm quiet at the meetings unless I need to control or do something. If I want to give my advice, I'm going to be careful with that, what I say publicly versus privately, but that basically requires me to violate attorney-client privilege, whether I want to or not, by saying my thoughts on the record.
That's an easy removal then.
Yeah,
Yep.
get rid of it.
And that's, again, very similar in that next section as well. I don't think you need it. It's obvious. It just gets at that same type issue. Again, now we're next under 6, public hearings. So that first section, I don't really think you need that. That's, a lot of these bylaws, it wouldn't surprise me if whomever got it from whomever that got it from whomever got it from before Ohio's Public Meetings Act was initiated.
Yeah.
Such that a lot of this terminology that's in there is unnecessary, including that first whole, sentence that says we'll only do stuff we're allowed to do and only when it's important. It's just doesn't add anything. Any problems with removing that one?
None at all.
This next section under A, frankly, as small as it is, Alex and I talked and debated over this one a little ad nauseum. How it was previously written basically said notice of public hearing shall be given as provided by law, just generally. And then it said if there be no such provision, then we're going to have a catch-all that says you got to publish it in a newspaper 30 days in advance of the involved hearing, which, number one, 30 days is a heck of a long time, and that's not something that's customary anymore. Number two, Ohio's Public Meetings Act was modified to allow for, in certain circumstances, non-newspaper based, electronic notice, put it on a website, things of that nature. So what we debated was, do we put anything in here? Do we specify much? What do we specify? Frankly, I can't think of a fact pattern where your board would probably meet that it wouldn't send out, that it wouldn't be governed by Ohio's sunshine laws or the Hamilton's Township zoning code, to where I almost think if anything you say there, you say, notice of public hearing should be given as provided by Ohio law, Hamilton Township zoning code. And then if you want some unforeseen catch-all, I wouldn't include 30-day newspaper. I'd say, I don't know what I'd say, 14 days by whatever method. We could come up with some language, but I just wouldn't. That's a pretty old draconian provision there.
So it might be everything you just said, and then maybe end it with, or 14 days, whichever is longer.
Sure, we could do something like that if you want to have some catch-all.
Yeah. That way, if the code changes their rules, we don't have to go back and reword ours. It just, if ours is longer, great. I mean, is 14 days enough?
Yes, generally speaking, it is.
Any other thoughts? Make the change?
I think 14 days is very reasonable.
14's good.
Yeah, agreed.
Alex, you get all that?
Well, I got the 14 days, but I may have to get with Ben on the rest of it.
Yeah, we can deal with that. And I deleted that next section as well, notice of public call. It gets into that same topic, basically. Then under subsection B, if any meeting or hearing of the commission is continued in progress, you technically don't adjourn the hearing in the middle of it, you continue it in progress. One hearing continued in progress from one date to another. So I just changed that. Tried to clean that section up a little bit. Subsection C, it said earlier that you're basically going to record all that stuff anyway. So I thought you don't need it. All right, so gaining some steam, you'll go down a little further. All right, so you have an internal consistency here. So you actually need to look up a little bit higher too. Let's see, can you go up? So this first section in here, oh, yep, sorry, can you go up? There it is, under the first paragraph under subsection 7. Sorry, Alex, I wish I could control it.
Okay, that's all right.
Yeah, right there. That's perfect. So the second to last sentence, I want to point to my computer and show it to you. It says on the very last line on page 6, in the interest of efficient procedure, time limits may be set by the chairperson for individuals wishing to be heard at public hearings. Thanks, Alex. But then when you go down to the next section, in there it says, audience comments are limited to 5 minutes and shall be focused on presenting new information or questions. So the question becomes, do you want to give your chair the power to kind of say, it looks like we've got 200 people in the audience. Maybe we need to keep the comments limited to, and I could talk with them about something's reasonable, 3 minutes a piece, so this, that, or the other. And then in the alternative, when you have 2 people in the audience, say, why put time limits? It's unnecessary. Or do you want to just say, dang it, Hamilton Township Zoning Commission, this is how we're going to do it. You guys get to decide that one.
I'm fine to put a reasonable amount of time and let it be flexible, because
Yeah.
sometimes the audience may have something that we actually want to hear that might be longer than 5 minutes. I doubt it, but and most people get kind of antsy after they're there for an hour anyway.
Yeah, I agree. And I think on the flip side of that, when there is a large audience, I think you need to have the ability to limit things so that you're not, number one, hearing the same thing 25 different times and you got 30 more people waiting to talk. So,
Yeah, 5 minutes is a long time to say something.
oh my gosh, yeah.
A lot of limit it to 3. That's pretty defensible.
Can we give them more than 3 minutes if there's something they're saying that we want to hear?
Of course. Yeah, you guys get to make your rules. Even if your bylaws say 3, if you want to say, oh, looks like your time is over, do we want to allow more? You could say yes.
Right.
So are we then eliminating the sentence up above?
I would, if you're going to put a specific period in there.
Or is it more that we should eliminate the part in number 6 where it gives a time limit and we should leave the sentence where it's basically leaving it up to the chairperson?
Yeah, that gets at the heart of it. Do you want to take it out, or do you want to?
I mean, I would say from what I'm hearing, if everybody is thinking that it should be flexible, we should actually take the sentence out of number 6 and leave it so that it says that it's up to the chairperson.
If that's the consensus, then yeah, I would take out that blue section there. Is that what the consensus is?
Yes, for me.
Yes.
Yes, for me.
Okay.
I was just rereading how it was going to state without it in there.
All right. Are we good there now?
Yes.
All right. Then we can move down lower, Alex.
Katie, you okay there?
Ben,
Can we jump in?
Yeah.
With us swearing people in? I want to make sure that we